Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May 8th meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission. I'd like to call us to order, and before we get started, just go through a few procedural items. If you have a cell phone with you today, please silence or turn it off. If you're here to speak on an item and are not the applicant, please fill out one of the forms available outside and provide it to Elena or Jared down here below. When that item is up on the agenda, you'll be called to come to the podium. Please give your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak. If you're here to speak with a large group of people, we encourage you to elect a representative to share all your group's concerns, and if that's the case, we'll consider some additional time for that person. Where several speakers are to be heard on an item, we just ask that you do your best to limit your comments to concerns that we haven't heard yet. We're just trying to limit extensive and repetitious comments. Please direct all your comments or questions to the commission, and if needed, we'll ask either the applicant or staff to respond to that. Finally, we'd just like to say we appreciate everyone's presence here today and the time that you've taken away from your other commitments and obligations, and we just ask for your help in upholding the decorum of the meeting. We ask that you don't speak from the audience, but only from the podium. So thank you for your attention and your assistance, and we'll get started. Item 1 on the agenda is receipt of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to receive the minutes with one change, and that change would be in members present to add Rusty Lafarge as present, and as members absent to add Dan Govine as absent.
All right, we have a motion to correct and receive the minutes. That's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And the minutes are received. Next, we have continuance requests and uncontested requests.
Item 13 is case C-7719, request to defer to May 22nd. Item 14, case PUD 2057, defer to May 22nd. Item 15, case SPUD 1685, defer to May 22nd. And item 16, case SPUD 1720, continue indefinitely.
Okay, I'll just confirm if anyone is here to be heard on any of those items. All right, seeing none, we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the continuance request, the uncontested request as read.
I have a motion to approve the uncontested requests. That's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And those requests are approved. Now new requests.
We have one new request. That's item 8, case SPUD 1713, request to defer to June 12th.
All right, anyone here to be heard on that item? All right, seeing none, we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the continuance request, the new request as read.
We have a motion to approve the new requests. Seconded by Commissioner LaForge. Please cast your votes. And that new request is approved. All right, that brings us to the one item on the consent docket.
This is case number C-7734, final plat of Pembrook Phase 3, located south of West Wilshire Boulevard and east of North County Line Road.
Just check, anyone here to be heard on that item? No, we are ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the consent docket.
We have a motion to approve the consent docket. That's been seconded by Commissioner Govine. Please cast your votes. And the consent docket is approved. All right, that brings us to the first item to be heard individually. That is item 2.
This is case C-7733, final plat of Green Hill Phase 2, located south of Northwest 164th Street and west of North Sarah Road.
Hello, Jessica Boy with Johnson & Associates representing the applicant. The final plat before you today is for the second phase of the Green Hill development. It is in conformance with the zoning code and subdivision regulations. Staff has recommended approval, and we are in agreement with all of the TEs. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. This is my ward, and it's pretty straightforward. I don't have any questions or concerns. Anything from anyone else? Doesn't look like it. I think I would be in favor of making a motion on this, but I'm unable to, so
I will, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve item number 2, C7733.
I have a motion from Commissioner Govine to approve item C7733. That's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. And that item is approved. Thank you. Next is item 3.
This is, excuse me, case C7732, preliminary plat of Colonial Court, located south of Northwest Expressway and west of North Sarah Road.
Good afternoon, Lloyd Splag, Capitol, 300 Point Parkway, on behalf of the applicant. This application consists of preliminary plat of Colonial Court, generally located southwest or North Sarah Road and Northwest Expressway. A couple months ago, this was currently rezoned as R2, previously approved by council. I'd like to make note on Standard TE2 that requesting to tie on to Northwest Expressway. We do plan on tying on to Northwest Expressway with Colonial Court Avenue with a dedicated right-of-way. We're happy to answer any questions, and we ask for your approval.
All right. Are you in agreement with all the TEs?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is my ward. I do not have any questions. So if there's none from other commissioners, I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of case number C7732.
A motion to approve C7732. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And that item is approved. Thank you. Item 4.
This is case C7735, preliminary plat of Walker and Southwest 83rd, located east of South Walker Avenue and north of Southwest 89th Street, along with variances to the subdivision regulations.
Good afternoon, David Box, 525 Northwest 11th Street, here on behalf of the applicant. This is a preliminary plat for a property that you saw recently when it came through with the rezoning. There were some meetings that took place with the neighbors that Commissioner Newman was helpful on. Ultimately, the PUD was recommended for approval, and this is simply the plat. So it's 15 lots. This is a duplex development, if you recall. And there are a handful of TEs, all of which we agree with, except we do need 2 variances. Variance on TE number 2 deals with street stub. So here we have already developed neighborhood to the south, an already developed church site to the north, and to the east is all floodplain. My belief was during those meetings with the neighbors, this was of kind of real importance of keeping those trees. So we don't want to do that, plus it's a blue line. So connecting this small neighborhood doesn't really have an opportunity to provide any value for any future development. And then finally, the length of the cul-de-sac. Based on the geometry of the site, there's no other way to put this street through here. So we agree with all the TEs, but we do need the variance on TE2 and TE3. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Commissioner Newman, this is your ward. You want to lead the discussion?
Sure. Do we have anyone signed up?
I don't.
Okay. I did go to the site and met with Mr. Box's office, and I do agree on the stub streets. I don't see in this case that they serve really any purpose. Additionally, I also agree on the cul-de-sac. So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the variance to section 5.3.1.D.5, the subdivision regulations, and not require the stub street.
All right. We have a motion to approve the variance from Commissioner Newman. That's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And that variance is approved.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance to table 5.1 in section 5.3.2.A of the subdivision regulations and not require the secondary exit.
We have a motion from Commissioner Newman related to the cul-de-sac length. That's been seconded by Commissioner Govine. Please cast your votes. And that variance is approved. Now we're ready for the item.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat C7735.
A motion from Commissioner Newman and a second from Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
And that item is approved. Item 5.
Item 5 is case PC 10972, application to rezone 11239 Northwest Expressway from R1.
We have an applicant present. Okay, we can move this to the end of the docket in hopes that they show up. So we'll move on to item 6.
This is PUD 2065, application to rezone 4401 East Hefner Road from PUD 701.
Good afternoon, David Box, 525 Northwest 11th, here on behalf of the applicant. Before you is a PUD that would add a couple of uses to an area that is dominated by large industrial warehouses. The use we need to work on and service automobiles is not included, so we've added that. If you're familiar with the area, really kind of both sides of I-35 through this stretch have very large, very nice warehouses. It's become a very important stretch on I-35 for Oklahoma City. There is one TE that we would seek to have removed. It asks us to put a sidewalk. If you look at the area, there are no sidewalks. Given the nature of the use and the type of large trucks and other pieces of heavy equipment that will be coming and going, sidewalks I don't think make sense, especially considering it would die into the I-35 service road. Again, if you join me on a Zoom, we kind of looked at all the different warehouses in the area, and none of them have sidewalks. I think it's an incompatible use to put with the sidewalk. So we would ask to delete the TE, and then I need to add a TE. This site will have 2 large compactors that are not easily screened. If there are traditional dumpsters on site, we would agree to screen those, but these very large compactors don't lend themselves to be able to be screened. So what we would propose is not to require us to screen the large compactors and instead line the frontage of Hefner Road with evergreen trees planted on 10-foot centers to alleviate any perceived visual impact. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Noble, this is Ward 8.
Ward 7, but
Oh,
I'll do it for him.
yes, you are correct.
Mr. Box, just on TE number 1, is it possible to just make, instead of striking it, just make an adjustment that says if the site was to be redeveloped, that sidewalks would be then required?
Well, I don't think so. I guess, redevelop for something other than industrial. But Jared, if you go back to the aerial, please. The problem is the area is nothing but industrial, and there are no sidewalks anywhere. So it's hard to imagine there being a scenario in which this were redeveloped in something other than industrial, where sidewalks would make any sense. And even if it were, you would just have a stretch of sidewalk in front of Hefner that dead ends into a I-35 service road and a large industrial shipping warehouse to the east.
Yeah, just the quick trip on the other side of the highway, sidewalked in front of it, and I thought maybe for pedestrian access or people who are working over there to there, but it was just a thought.
We'd prefer not to, just because there'd be no way to get over to that.
Similarly, there may not be now, but there could be in the future. Still a lot of development could happen here on the south, different places. Let me ask it this way, even if we don't require it now, is there already an easement in favor of the city? If later this develops to where people need to walk to Frontier City, to Quick Trip, to work, to anywhere, there's no other way to get east or west. If the city wanted to come along later and put sidewalks in, is there a given easement? Or I just want to make sure the property owner cannot prohibit there from ever being sidewalks here.
We can give an easement if necessary. The city probably already has within their right-of-way.
Right.
The ability to do it. If they don't, we're happy to give them the easement. So if they want to do that in the future,
I would like one of those two. If it's already in the right-of-way, fine, otherwise an easement, because again, just because later, this may be a spot we want people to walk. I don't know how else people could walk east-west otherwise.
I agree that we can't, we're trying to think about future development. That was why the proposal for language about if the site were to be redeveloped, since this PUD stays with the property regardless of.
When you say
we're not saying you
redeveloped.
can't. Well, that's the difficulty, is how do we define that redeveloped, or if new construction were to occur, or if, what's redevelopment? I understand your point there. It's hard to define.
So not only is it hard to find, to me, it's not as much what's on this property, it's what's to the east and the west and north and south. And so even if this stays a warehouse forever, to not be able to walk by this property off of the street. So does the city happen to know if there's just already a right-of-way easement? Otherwise, I think they're amenable to.
Sarah's looking it up.
Okay.
I mean, the entire area is already developed, and none of it has sidewalk.
To the south is developed?
I'm saying everything north and east, everywhere there's a warehouse on both the east side of I-35 and the west side of I-35, there are no sidewalks, where it's developed with large warehouse industrial.
And I kind of understand it along I-35. I don't want people walking north-south along I-35. They should skip over to a different north-south street. The warehouse that is on Hefner, don't know why there's not a sidewalk there, but I think there either should be, or there should at least be an easement to where that property owner cannot prohibit there from ever being a sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I think quite likely the neighbor to the east, the warehouse, may have to allow a sidewalk. So I want to make sure this location, no matter what it is ever existing there, that the property owner cannot prohibit a sidewalk.
And we don't, the SPUD does not prohibit sidewalk. The city either has within the right-of-way can do it, or we're happy to give them what would be necessary if the city wanted to put people in danger by walking back and forth in front of warehouses across
So
I-35.
instead, they walk on the street. That would be less dangerous to walk in the
Well,
street than this.
If you spend
Really?
any time here, I
Mr. Box.
suggest no one's walking.
But sidewalks are for safety, not danger. They're to keep people off of the street.
A fair
Indeed.
point.
If someone doesn't have a car, I'm gonna be nice. Someone that needs to walk, the sidewalk is for safety. Don't say it's making it unsafe. It's for people that are walking. All right.
All right, do we have any kind of information from staff? I have to think that there's right-of-way available for.
I think there is too, so let's just make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah Welch, Planning Department. I was going to say, I mean, on the fly, I can't tell you for sure exactly how much right-of-way we have from the center of Hefner. However, what we're talking about today is who installs them. We believe that we have the right-of-way that if the city wanted to install sidewalks, we could. What we're discussing is whether, if and when this developer would have to install them.
Right, and because it may likely not develop in a way that it needs pedestrians through here, then I don't want to make them pay for it now. If we're confident enough that in the future, if sidewalks, we did a big sidewalk program in Oklahoma City, up and down May Avenue, all over the city. Just want to make sure that just because we're not requiring them to pay for it now, that if we need sidewalks there in the future, we get to put sidewalks there. Well, let's-
I do think that we have it. I mean, if I measure, it's hard to measure just because of the center line of Hefner curves, but we have it appears to be at least 60 feet, 60 to 80 feet between the center line of Hefner to the property line.
In fact, you can see it on this. You can see how much green space exists within the right-of-way based on where that dash line is.
With that, I don't know about the other commissioners, but if we're comfortable with that, then I don't think we need to make them pay for it now when it may never be an appropriate spot for it. But, or if there's a way to put a TE in here to allow it in the future, that may be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the fact that it is a very established industrial area that does not have sidewalks in this case.
I mean, I tell
not
you
hung
where,
up on that, but-
the standard practice is if it's new construction, they're responsible for sidewalks. This is not new construction. Yes, there's a chance it'll be redeveloped, but there's also a chance that it won't be. So I'm fine with it.
Striking it.
Yeah.
But if the city did want to come and put sidewalks in, I would encourage that. It would be a great idea for the next bond.
Okay, I think,
Did anyone sign up to speak, Nate?
no, no.
Anything from any other commissioners? No?
I think we're ready for a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of PUD 2065, striking TE number 1 and adding a new TE number 1 with no screening of compactor required and evergreens planted on 10-foot centers along Hefner Road.
All right. Is that the entire length of Hefner Road, or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Noble to recommend approval of the item, subject to the new technical evaluation. That's been seconded by Commissioner LaForge. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
And as recommended for approval. Item 7.
Item 7 is SPUD 1729, application to rezone 2020 Northwest 23rd Street from SPUD 1529 and UC to SPUD 1729.
Rob Elliott, Elliott Architects, 900 Northwest 6th Street. This property has a spud on it, has been redeveloped as an urgent care clinic, and we need to amend the spud to allow different signage.
Okay. Commissioner Govine, this is Ward 6.
Thank you. Yeah, my understanding of this one is this is amending the signage requirements to be in conformance with the new sign code, and I don't see any issues with that. It seems like the right thing to do.
Yes, sir.
Staff recommends approval. I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else?
Does not appear so.
No one signed up to speak?
No.
Okay, I will move to recommend approval of SPUD 1729.
A motion from Commissioner Govine to recommend approval of City Council. That's been seconded by Commissioner Newman. Please cast your votes.
Great, thanks.
As recommended for approval. Thank you. Item 8 has been continued. Brings us to item 9.
This is SPUD 1725, application to rezone 1210 North Ann Arbor Avenue from R1 and UC to SPUD 1725.
We have an applicant present. Another one. Okay, we will move that to the end behind our other continued or delayed item 5, and we'll go to item 10.
Item 10 is SPUD 1728, application rezone 2201 North Bryant Avenue from C3 and HNO.
Good afternoon, David Box, 525 Northwest 11th, here on behalf of the applicant. The SPUD before you would allow for a nursing home to be developed for adults with developmental problems. It's a building that's been vacant for some time. It's already existing. These buildings tend to lend themselves to be redeveloped in a much more cost-efficient manner, given that it's there. There are 4 TEs. We agree with TE1. However, we would like to change the word construction to structure. So what the TE is saying is sidewalks shall be provided along North Bryant in accordance with City of Oklahoma City Municipal Code and ADA requirements at the time of new construction. We don't want a building permit to trigger that. We'd rather be at the time of a new structure if it were built. We're fine with that. We agree to TE4, and we would ask to strike TEs 2 and 3. I'm not sure what the goal of the TE is. What TE2 is trying to do is remove the language which is fairly common language, that what's there is there and shall be deemed in conformance. We don't want to get a SPUD approved and it somehow trigger a zoning violation because the new SPUD makes the existing building not in compliance. So I guess I'd ask staff, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish here? I'll take the silence as we can strike.
I believe that there's so many things that could be implied in this that it was so open-ended. I think there was some concerns on 1, or on 2 and on 3, especially 3 with the lighting and.
Sure. Sarah Welch, Planning Department, specifically on TE3. What this bud is trying to do is say, hey, anything that's on the ground now, which staff cannot confirm, is deemed in conformance with your zoning regulations. All we're trying to say is specifically for screening, landscaping, and lighting, we don't know or have proof of what the screening, the lighting, or landscaping is, so we're just asking that it just meets code.
But, so let's start at TE2.
T2 is a disclaimer that's located in the very beginning of the master design statement, and we're asking to just strike that. And then 3 is specific to screening, landscaping, and lighting, because again, we don't know. I didn't personally visit the site. The exhibits we have don't clearly define or tell us what any fencing or materials, height, what any landscaping or lighting is, and I don't know how we'd be able to know in the future that what is or it is not in conformance with the SPUD or the code.
Sure. So on the landscaping, we have significant tree cover along the kind of the north, the west, and there's a lot of trees along the south. What I'm most concerned about is TE2. If we strike the provision that says all current buildings and improvements on the site shall be permitted to remain and deemed permissible, if there's something about that building that would be in violation of the zoning code, there'd be no way to cure it. And so the improvements in the structure, as is, need to be deemed to conform. In the event that there's a new structure built, then yeah, whatever the code is, it is.
Right. I understand. I'm not sure how staff or this commission knows what they're actually approving as on the ground without more information about setbacks and building height and materials. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, what you're approving is what you see. But if the setback was a couple feet off, what are we going to do? Go get a variance to the SPUD or chop off a foot of a building like that? When you have an existing structure, this is the only way that I know legally to do it, to ensure that you're not going to face a problem in the future with rezoning your building that exists, and by so doing, you have created a zoning violation.
Well, we specifically didn't use setbacks because when we reviewed it, the only one that we thought you might have a problem with is the south one, which is covered in TE4, which is stating that the south setback has no minimum setback, but in the event that for the existing building, but then any new structures would have to meet code. So it specifically was the screening, landscaping, and lighting that we didn't feel comfortable just blessing.
So okay, so TE2 then you're fine with striking, because we covered in TE4.
I think striking that, I think you would be comfortable, if we didn't strike that one, then you'd be comfortable with striking 3 because that first one would cover everything else.
Well, I think I'm not sure the lighting, we can commit that we'll meet lighting, that whatever the lighting standards are in the municipal code, we can confirm that we'll meet that. I am most concerned about whatever that building is as relates to setback or height or anything else. Without this provision, it opens up a zoning violation.
We might not have enough information then about the application.
Could you just leave on T number 2, just say all current buildings?
Sure.
And leave out the improvements? And that'll at least get you the footprint of the building?
That's fine.
Okay.
Better, Sarah?
Yeah, that makes more sense, I think.
If you have some weird issue that you got a height, it's like, you couldn't go get a variance because it's, specifically negotiated legislative document, so you can't even go to the Board of Adjustment, so we'd be rezoning it again, I guess? I don't know. But building is what we're worried about.
Or you'd be paying to make those improvements so that
Or
the
what?
site conforms. So if we're allowing the current building, but not necessarily improvements, you got to bring the site up to current standards to operate the facility.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. The building's what we're worried about.
Yeah, so I like Dawn's suggestion of just striking the word improvements from TE2. I still want to come back to TE1 on the sidewalks. But I don't want to, if we're still talking about 2 and/or 3. I guess my question is, when you say you want to change the word construction to structure, I think the intent of the TE is at the time of new construction in this SPUD, you're going to permit renovations to this building to make it a facility for a nursing home facility, and that's construction. I mean, so that would be saying that sidewalks need to be built on this site, which is a block off of 23rd Street and close to I-35, that, why wouldn't it have sidewalks?
So what my client tells me is that Bryant is a bar ditch and is where the water is conveyed. There is, of course, no other sidewalks anywhere on this map. So we'd prefer not to have sidewalks.
It's a point of discussion. I'm not stuck on it. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding when they said.
There is a drainage.
What I heard was, at the time of a new structure being constructed, that would trip the sidewalks. So if they built a new building,
Yes.
that was what I felt the intent was. So if they use, renovate the interior of the structure to meet their needs, that wouldn't, they wouldn't do sidewalks for that. But if they built a new structure on the site.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that it's a shift in what the TE actually achieves. And
I
in
think
a way, it's similar to the discussion we just had about sidewalks, although this is not an industrial area and it's an actual residential facility.
So the use is different, and that's, I think, what you were going
Yeah.
to. If for this use, I mean,
Yeah.
sidewalks would make sense.
I do understand, I'm not trying to present an undue hardship because of the drainage and how the site's currently arranged, and that's kind of the conundrum, but if you just look at where it is, you could conceive that people might actually be walking in this area. So I guess I'm okay with the structure, with changing the word out to structure, and at least there's that, but we're not forevermore allowing the site to not have sidewalks.
Commissioner Privet has the Google Earth street view, and it is a pretty considerable bar ditch there.
I can see it too, yeah, that's why I'm trying to be understanding on that.
Going back to, so are we square on sidewalks? And, okay, so now I want to talk about landscape.
Okay.
You wanted to strike TE3. I mean, would you be agreeable to just saying that existing screening, landscaping, and lighting shall meet code?
Sure.
Okay. Would just be, it would meet the code requirement? Or if it doesn't meet code, it would be brought up to code?
Yeah, I think that's what we're,
That's what you're trying to do?
The reason the T is drafted that way is if those are struck, then what remains is that it'll just meet code.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And to be specific, we went through every section of the SPUD and only selected those 3. The other ones, we were able to tell there wouldn't be any issue with, building height. We addressed the setback in TE4, building size, things like that. It was just these 3.
David, you're good with where we are?
Meeting code on landscaping and lighting? Yes,
Right.
sir.
And just by striking that, which then reverts back to it, would just
Yeah, that's
meet
fine.
code.
Agreeable to TE3. Okay.
So that's TE 4 and 3 that we would agree to, the modification suggested by Commissioner Noble on 2, and then the modification suggested by me on TE1.
Good. Anyone signed up to speak?
No.
Okay. There was a protest, but in the packet. Anything from any other commissioners? No? Ready?
I think we're ready for a motion.
With that, I'd like to recommend approval of SPUD 1728 with P number 1, the modification to remove construction in this SPUD and add structure. T number 2 to remove and improvements. Keep T3 and number 4.
Okay. We have a motion from Commissioner Noble, subject to the amended technical evaluations. That's been seconded by Commissioner Govine. Please cast your votes. And that is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11.
Item 11 is PUD 2061, application to rezone 15670 Aspen Brook Lane from PUD 706.
Good afternoon, David Box, 525 Northwest 11th. Here on behalf of the applicant, Kendall Dillon, who's the civil engineer for the project, is also here with us. This is a PUD that would allow for a townhome development. This is in the Lone Oak area, if you're familiar. And so right now you have, would you go to the aerial, Jared, please? You have this, if you'll go to the, there you go. You have Lone Oak, which has been a neighborhood, single-family neighborhood developing for quite some time. To the east of the subject site, you have a traditional garden-style apartment, and this is a spot that was kind of left over. And so what we are proposing is a townhome development. From a built environment standpoint, it would act as a nice transition from the higher density multifamily that exists to the east, and then moving towards a single family. So we do have some features on site that we think lends itself to being compatible. You have a significant drainage easement on our west, which is 45 feet, which means we're really 134 feet from the west property line to our building. And then along the south, we'll end up with a 60-foot setback. So there are a handful of TEs. So on TE 1 and 2, we agree. We agree to sidewalks. TE 3, what we would propose is modify 20 to 10. TE 4, we agree. TE 5, we agree. And on TE 6, what we would ask is to modify that to be triggered by a certificate of occupancy rather than a specific plan. The reason being, what they're discussing is the extension of this street right here, which of course is necessary for our development. But we want to tie it to a CO, which I think is the concern, is making sure that this street is extended before anyone lives there. So by tying it to the CO, we think it's perhaps a better fit than tying it to a specific plan.
Okay. Commissioner Noble, this is Ward 8.
It looks like you might have someone signed up to
I
speak.
do have someone signed up to speak.
I'd like to hear from them first.
Okay, great. Mr. Galen Thorpe? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, folks. Galen Thorpe, 4121 Northwest 155th Street, in opposition to this application. I'm speaking on behalf of many in the two adjoining neighborhoods, Lone Oak East and Lone Oak North, either at Lone Oak East. We're asking you to deny the zoning change away from R1, and I've got three big concerns. First, traffic. If permitted to add 120 units, that's 200 more cars, sometimes twice a day, traveling through the middle of this neighborhood. They are just as like, if you look at the, I don't know if you have, these are just the zoomed in ones. I guess this one helps. So I'm here on Lone Oak East, Lone Oak North. This one has the access road of Aspen Brook, which does not have homes facing it. But folks are just as, if this is built, folks are just as likely to be going north through Lone Oak North, which is just streets, kids, neighborhood the whole way up to 164th Street. 164th is also just single lane with no turn lanes. Moving this additional traffic through this neighborhood is likely to create just problems, that traffic considerations that aren't in play. At the very least, if you're going to allow something like this, we would strongly request that you require Aspen Brook to be extended over to Portland. There's some other development over here that would relieve the pressure on the neighborhood. If people can come and go that way rather than through the middle of this neighborhood. I think the neighborhood's just not ready for that much more traffic. Second, compatibility issues. We don't think that that's been sufficiently addressed, and their proposals on the TEs would even reduce that. This would be building up to my backyard and dozens of others on the sides. This lot is on higher elevation, so it's looking down into the backyards, significantly decreasing privacy. If it was single family build as it's currently zoned, there would just be like one lot, usually a backyard, adjoining my property and the other properties around. But instead, there's going to be parking lots and dozens of units facing our backyards, which is not consistent, I believe, with the R1. The existing apartment buildings are far enough away, it doesn't really create a privacy issue, but moving it right up, we think, is not compatible. So to that point, the staff suggested a 20-foot landscaping buffer on the south side adjoining my property. They want to reduce it to 10. I really think 20 feet is really the minimum with this much of an upgrade of use. So we would if you're going to approve it, please at least do that. And I wasn't sure in the staff recommend comments what kind of about step downs in height meant on page 9. But given the nature of this and the elevation and facing the backyards, we think if you're going to go forward, whatever compatibility you can do to address the privacy issues there. And we think that given the nature of there's a creek right on the other side, it goes up a hill. Unless you require Aspen Brook to be extended, we don't think that's ever going to happen. So we really expect that if it goes forward as proposed, it's going to be putting all that traffic through the neighborhood, especially Lone Oak North and 164th that's not ready for it. They may mention that this is also zoned light industrial. We think that's kind of beside the point. That's from the 90s when they thought this whole area on Portland might get another use. It's all being built as residential of various kinds. So that's just never going to happen, so not an issue here. Thank you for listening to me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thorpe.
So real quick, on the traffic issue, it's worth noting that Aspen Brook Lane was built to collector standards. So it was built specifically to carry more volume of traffic than a traditional neighborhood street. I know that to the neighborhood, it feels like a traditional neighborhood street, but it's not, because it's part of a much larger kind of master plan that was intentionally built larger to carry more traffic. Eventually, this will connect over to here and up north and even perhaps down south. So that was built specifically to carry large volumes of traffic. The traffic anticipated from this development is certainly in line with what that road is able to handle. In terms of the landscaping, my belief is that a 5-foot buffer is what's required under the code. What we're proposing is 10. What we could do is add an additional requirement that trees be planted on 20-foot centers within that southern landscape buffer. And we do have a 60-foot setback, and these are limited to 2 stories.
I liked I had penciled in to get your opinion on shade trees.
Sure. Yeah, we can say shade trees on 20-foot centers.
So I like that compromise, because that'll give some screening and and contribute toward the privacy concerns.
What's the height, the height on these?
Two-story.
Two-story, standard 30.
Which you would get if it was single family anyway.
Same thing, right.
But I understand, whereas you might have one unit with a single family out your backyard with this, the density is strong, so you have 2 or 3. So I understand that.
And there is a parking lot, so that the distance to the first buildings is much greater than the 10 feet landscape buffer.
The other thing, that you see is you've got where the units face the back of the existing residential, you've got that parking, you've got the drainage area, so you got a buffer. On the south side, you're getting the ends of the buildings. So, 1, 2, 3 units,
Yep.
sidewalls.
Yeah.
So,
And a parking lot buffer, so. One of the concerns that I had was just the overall look. The buildings are 8 buildings attached and then a little green space, and then 8 buildings attached the whole way. It seems like there's the density, while it's only, what is it, just like 12 or something dwelling units per acre, it just seems very just compact. It just doesn't have a lot of variety.
Yeah, so this is obviously a concept plan. We do commit to a specific plan, and so they're still kind of working out exactly what the end product will be. We had some concept drawings that we shared with the neighbors. This was really illustrative of circulation, density, those things, not what, I understand it feels very like institutional, the way it looks at this. I think what you'll see when we come back through a specific plan is it's a much more softer feel.
yeah, I would love to see that at the next review period, that maybe some of that green space up on the north can be redistributed down between the units, possibly, just so that everyone has green space, usable green space that's a little bit more closer, centralized to those south units.
Yeah, I agree, and that's usable open space. I wish we could define that a little better as common area, so that we're not talking about just the net extra board, throwaway space around the perimeter, that we're talking about meaningful shared common area that can break up this massing a little bit.
And it is, so the definition in the code, it says open space usable area intended for common use by occupants or residents of development, et cetera. So we would consider, basically, in my mind, the usable open space is that at the top that was mentioned already. The other is not. The drainage, the backyard space is clearly meant to be private. So really that at the top is, appears to be usable open space by residents.
But it's not. Because
it's not located in a very
it's
central
just
location.
frontage.
Yeah.
And so we're not having the kids playing along this major arterial collector that can handle loads of traffic. So we want to see that open space
Used within the development.
intentionally within the development for the shared use of the residents in the specific plan.
Okay, we agree with the TE, and we'll meet the code, which defines usable open space.
Okay.
Kendall, did you hear us pretty good?
For the record, Kendall Dillon, Cotton Toll. Just so we are clear, so if it develops as one lot, then in my mind, at least interpretation of the code, then it still meets the area behind the units or between the units would still count toward open space. Even if we fenced it, it would still meet that ordinance,
I don't think
correct?
so. It's intended for common use by occupants. So that space is, whether it's subdivided or not, is not common usable open space.
Okay, so if it's one lot with no fences between them, then is it usable open space?
If that were just kind of an open green alley,
But if you put fences in it, then it's no longer, even though it says private or public, I think in your code is usable open space on definition, right?
it says either privately owned and maintained or dedicated to the public, but it says it's common, intended to be used commonly. So if you want people hopping fences to use the common space, then you could argue that that is, but I mean, that's not the way it reads to me.
Well, so, if this were multifamily though, which is the current zoning is, right, then it would be 40% open space, but that includes parking lots and everything, correct?
Yeah.
Under R4 zoning. So,
That's arguable as well.
well, that's the way it's interpreted though.
I would say that's how the ninth floor
Right.
permits it.
So I think we're agreeable to the 20%, but, and I think we've had some conversation with Sarah trying to glean before we agree to the TE. It was our understanding that it would meet the usable open space definition, even if it were fenced. But if that's not the case, then I think we need to amend the TE just to have 20% open space, or to allow for that, even if it's fenced, to be considered as usable open space.
Well, the way the definition reads is not usable open space, that backyard space, unless you open it up to some just green alleyways.
Or unless we modify it here with the PUD, because what we're really looking at is, we got R4 zoning, so now this is a staff recommendation, a TE, so if we can negotiate, so if you look at it, not only, this site's zoned industrial as it sits, it's partly R4, it's, industrial I1 as it sits. So I think if you look at our total common area, we're more like, if you were to apply it the way that you would a true multifamily, whereas it's 40% open space, we're like 60% open space if you count the drives and everything else. So that concept is fairly close to what I think we're going to need to make this project work. I think the open space, again, it hinges on the rear, the space between the buildings. Yes, we can consider not having fences, but we certainly would like to have the option of having the fences to make it private for the individual units.
Well, we can't interpret those private space as being usable open space the way this is worded for common use, but what we can, I think what the commission is saying is they want open space in the center of the development and they want it usable. So if maybe there's a way to say, well, this is how we can do that.
Well, but, okay, so the R4 doesn't require 20% usable open space. That's the TE. We were agreeing to the TE when it was our understanding that that met the intent with the space between, even if it was fenced. What I'm saying now is I don't think we can agree to the TE as it reads, and we can agree to the traditional
R4
application of open space under R4, or the 20% of green area or grassed area is fine with us. We're hung up on if we can fence between the units is our issue. And so I think what we would ask then is to edit or to modify that TE however we need to allow for 20% of impervious or grass, plus we have the additional drainage that we're not taking into that consideration, or just adhere to the open space requirements of the R4, which part of it's already zoned R4 as well as industrial.
Are you talking about usable open space when you're referring to
I'm just talking
R4?
about, or green space, however you want to define it. If that's the definition of usable, and if we fence in between the units, it's not considered usable, then we need to not agree or amend that TE to make that concept plan function, is what I'm saying.
What is the
And what I'm
requirement?
trying,
What is the requirement for R4?
40%
it's 40% open, but it counts parking and everything.
That's not what we're talking, that's not usable
Right,
open
we're
space.
talking about the common grassy area, yeah.
Which is not a requirement under R4.
But that's the argument I think we're making, is it's R4 zoning. We got apartments immediately to the east, If you look at the R4 zoning, it would be 40% open space, including the parking, everything. What this concept, when we were agreeing to the 20% usable, which is what we're disputing now, is the definition of usable or whether this complies. You know, this has 20% of impervious or grassed area within the development, not including the parking, not including the drives or anything else. So if you were to apply it the same way that it's applied with a multifamily, instead of 40, we would have 60 if you want to include the parks, the drives, and everything else. So what we need or to do is either to strike the TE altogether or to amend it to where it specifically says that the 20% usable can be fenced in between the units.
Well, I think what,
That one doesn't make sense to me.
so if you want to say, well, this is the amount of usable open space that we can commit to, I think then the commission can make a decision on what percentage they're okay with and where it's going to be located. But usable open space is intended for common use by occupants, and it talks about the recreational purpose.
But what we're saying is we far exceed the R4 regs, which is 40% open space. We have, as defined by the code, we have 60% open space. The TE is adding a provision that isn't required under R4. R4 says 40% open space.
Yes.
We have 60%.
Yes, the TE is adding that, and you've heard from the commission that they wanted centralized usable open space. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the R4 open space. So if you want to define, as was said, what that usable open space is and how much you're willing to commit to and where, I think that's what I heard anyway. And I'm telling you how I interpret usable open space, which is just what it says. It's common use by occupants for recreational purposes, to summarize.
Right. Well, since we're exceeding what R4 and it's a PUD, perhaps we can create a provision where we allow the TE to remain, but allow that to include fenced areas.
I don't think we can get behind the fenced backyards. A fenced common ground in the middle, something like that. I think.
Or all the way at the back.
So then why not, we'll just go to, we will adhere to R4. Actually, we will commit to give you 20% more open space than R4 requires.
And I don't think you have 60%, but I mean, if you're including the fenced in backyards, but if you are, then you do. We want to see, I think we want to see the specific plan, at least some detail, give you a percentage of open space that we can agree on.
Well, because, I mean, the thing is usable open space as defined as a common use is very different than backyards that is an amenity that you get to market and charge people for, because they now get that area, which is great. I'd still want to see that. So, I mean, I'm encouraged by that, but that's just not the same thing. So if you want to fence those back areas, then you'd have to squeeze in a little more shared common area in other parts of the property. So it's, I mean.
And I understand that argument. And I think the counter argument, at least in part, was as opposed to a traditional multifamily where you have then in each one of these units, not only do you have the open space, but you also have a backyard.
Jared, go to the aerial, please.
So, but.
And we do see that, and we do agree. I think it's just, like David said, it's what we're looking at is very institutional. It's so straight lined and squared off. If we saw something that had a little more character, that was more transition from the R4 to the R1, that we would be more agreeable.
So our thought was, if you look at the R4, to our east, its open space is made up of a pool and the parking lots that exist. Here, because we do have these private backyards, we are very different than an R4 development, because it's not just parking in a random pool. Everyone's going to have their own private area. So our open space is significant and provides for a better transition and perhaps development style than what would be expected under traditional R4. So we went with an R4 base, but then modified it in terms of setbacks and heights and all of those things to soften the impact.
I think the concern really, and from my personal opinion, I like the grid nature of it. I like a street corridor, and I think that can be a successful living, option for people, and it's a good product. But it's just a really long, relentless street that needs a little more breaking up to allow a better living environment for people and kids and community engagement and socializing. So I like the usable open space, and I like the city's definition of it, and fenced backyards are not common area. But there's a way to do both if you want, and I mean,
Where is the usable open space required? I understand it's defined. Is it a requirement in any zoning district?
Let me jump in here. I haven't said anything all day. The definition of PUD is to maximize flexibility and innovation in development by utilizing area-sensitive site planning to design an achievement of desirable mixture of compatible land use patterns that include efficient pedestrian and vehicular circulation, enhanced residential amenities, and allowance for the provision of usable open space, period. End of the lesson here. This is a PUD. PUDs have a ability to negotiate, and I believe the exhibit is a little bit prison-type feeling and needs some open space. I think that's all they're asking for, common area. And I agree.
But what if we said 10% usable?
%10 usable outside of any private designated.
Well, I think they probably have that on the end.
Jared, can you change back?
Well,
to
and
the
I
picture?
don't count detention or drainage easements either for that.
Right. Just the little.
I don't know how much is on the top there. Do you guys know what that's
the meat of it.
The open space to the north? And that meets the definition, apparently. I don't see any drainage structures in there, so it apparently meets.
Yeah, there's no drainage in the
Yeah,
north.
so that would meet the definition of usable open space.
It's just right on the road. I think is where this conversation started. And we're trying to get it pushed, in the middle or, at the back of the property, something that would be beneficial to, maybe the neighbors too, if it was on the back.
Well, we
There's
do have the
one
amenity.
pocket park in the
So
back.
we have the amenity in the southeast corner.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that by the dumpster?
They aren't showing those.
You guys, I mean, do y'all have the same picture we have? That amenity you're talking about in the southeast corner is pretty weak, right? I mean, this is not, somebody said prison-like. I mean, come on, guys. Should we continue this until you guys think about making this to where, as he read a PUD definition, this makes sense and is taken into consideration everything that we are all suggesting? Or do you want to keep nitpicking and trying to keep this from looking like this should look?
Well, we're looking at an overhead view. I think calling it prison-like is probably unfair. If you look to the east, when you look from above, it also looks prison-like.
Okay.
But when
So
you
far, the
look from
compromises
ground,
you've been
the
asking
elevation of
for.
the structure, it looks like a place that people live.
Okay. The conversation we've had has convinced me that even what we are requesting at the original list is not sufficient. So if we're going any direction, I'm going to ask for even more than the staff has asked for in these TEs. I'm the opposite of leaning towards you. I'm considering whether the staff has asked for enough.
I'm hearing that maybe it might be best to take 2 weeks and consider some of these things and come back. But I don't.
That's fine. We'll take 2 weeks.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to defer case number PUD 2061 till, what is it, May
22nd.
22nd.
All right, we have a motion to defer the item to the May 22nd meeting. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And that item is continued. Item 12.
Item 12 is PUD 2063, application to rezone 6300 Northeast 63rd Street from AA.
Hi, my name is Malia Renee at 6300 Northeast 63rd Street, and I am here today on behalf of Naja Development Group. While I may be young, I can assure you that I've been a part of this industry for the majority of my life, whether it was being on job sites with my dad while I spoke with a subcontractor or showing houses with my mom throughout the OKC Metro. So real estate is in my DNA. That being said, housing diversity is essential for creating inclusive, resilient communities that can meet the needs of people at all life stages and income levels. Naja 2 does just that by offering a variety of housing types. Whether a resident is graduating college or starting a family or downsizing and simply wishing to live out their golden years in the serene, picturesque backdrop that comes with living in Northeast Oklahoma City, we'll have options that suit their needs. And while I would love to field all of your questions on the project, I'm not quite ready for that just yet. So with that, I'll bring up my boss and dad, Marcus Uday.
Marcus Uday, 6300 Northeast 63rd. And the only other thing that I would touch on this is the elephant in the room on this. There's a reason that you're not seeing a staff recommendation for approval on this, and it's simply due to the fact that the comprehensive plan doesn't have a place for this development. Not only does it not have a place for this development, it does not have a place for this general area of Oklahoma City. The subject property is located at a critical transition where we move to more of a rural type of development, and essentially, we're looking at something that doesn't quite fit in the rural medium, doesn't quite fit in the urban low, and I feel that we've designed something that would be the equivalent to the middle ground between the two.
Okay. Well, we are currently without Ward 7 commissioners, so Commissioner Noble, would you like to start our discussion?
I can. Did anyone sign up to speak?
I do have a couple signed up to speak.
I think we should hear from them first.
Okay. All right. Ms. May Burge.
Hi, I'm May Burge. My property is right next to the development, and it is agricultural. We do gardens, and I'm concerned about the privacy. I'm concerned about the noise level that will be generated with housing additions behind me, family dwellings. Currently, of course, we have a short fence back there, but nothing to keep, I'm on 10 acres. There's nothing to keep somebody from approaching from the rear and even living back there, especially in the wintertime when I'm not back there on a regular basis. So we're very concerned about the privacy, number one. If you should decide to grant this, then we want a 10, 15-foot fence that would protect our property from those individuals who would, that would be there, especially if they're going to be a multi-level. And it sounds like it could be a multi-level structures that are going up because we're talking about multi-level dwellings. And that is a problem for us. There are some of the acreages out there are 5 acres. Mine's 10. I think Lori may be more than mine. But we are very concerned about this. And we live in the rural for a reason. And we would like for it to stay that way. There are many other places that are the in-between places you're talking about. I guess that's really all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Burge. We heard your concerns, and we can certainly ask the applicant about some kind of perimeter screening, whether it be a wall, fence, et cetera. So I'm sure we'll hear about that here in a little bit. Next, I have Ms. Lori Turner.
Hello, thank you for hearing me today. I'm begging you guys, please do not let this go through. My mother bought this property back in the early 70s because it was rural route. We moved from the city limits to be in a rural route area. Plus, there's a Conoco pipeline that runs through there. I've contacted Conoco today to let them know that this hearing is going on. They've never allowed any heavy equipment crossing over that pipeline, which it's drawn there by the little lines that go through. My property faces 63rd Street, and it backs up to where they're wanting to build. I already have a big problem with the High Point residents that escape and come through my woods. I have found people camping out back through there. Not to mention, this whole area in my growing up back there has always been known as an Indian burial ground, that whole area that they're wanting to develop. I have proof on my property of that fact. Not to mention the millions of trees that they're wanting to kill, the thousands of animals that would be displaced, and plus I have rare species back there. I don't know if you guys have ever seen glass lizards, but we have them back there, which this would eliminate them entirely. I have bobcats that run through there. I have, which, you know, they're migrant, and they come and go at different times of the year. I have so many concerns, and for what they're wanting to do can be put anywhere where there is an infrastructure to support it. We do not have infrastructure for any of that. Everything, utilities, stops on the west side of Sooner. They're going to have their own water wells. They're going to have their own sewage. They're going to have all of that infrastructure. Cox Cable doesn't even come out this way. There is just so much wrong with this, and they're wanting to do it just for the name of the dollar. We've been living out here since the 70s, enjoying our peace and quiet. My entire family has had the luxury of passing on and living out their final days in the quietness of this lovely area. And I and my sister are approaching our elderly years. We do not want to be encroached on by this kind of a development out there in rural route. This is insane. I can't believe that it's even being proposed. I beg you to not pass it, because for one, you will destroy my livelihood by allowing this. And I'm sure the Bergs feel the same way, and the Barkers, which I was hoping the Barkers would be here today. They have a vested interest in it as well. And I'm sure that they would say no to the development of this area, which the Barkers, they own 500 acres there behind them, and they're on the corner. So why they are here, they must not have gotten notice. I received notice only a week and a half ago, barely enough time to pull my thoughts together on it. So once again, this is madness. Please do not allow it. Thank you.
Ms. Turner, could I get you to state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Lori Janice Turner. I live at 6000 Northeast 63rd, and that 20 acres has been in my family since the early 70s. And like I say, that's the whole reason we bought that, or I say we, my mother bought that, was so that we could be out of the city limits and into rural route to where we could enjoy the silence and the quietness and not be infiltrated and feel like we're under siege by this kind of development. And I've seen the development that these people have done before. They don't care about the trees, they don't care about the animals. I've got so many species of animals out there to protect. You know, that's for my reason, when I die, that land will be donated to Wild Cares because I want it to stay wild. This would not allow that to happen.
So there is nothing in your mind that could be done to make this
No.
proposal more agreeable?
No, I am dead set against it, and I will fight it with everything I've got. It may not be much compared to what the big dollars have, but I will fight for what I love. And I love my property, and I love my neighbors, and we want the same thing, to be left alone in solitude. You know, fire department takes forever. I don't know if you guys remember the wildfire August 30th, 2011, that burned all the way, it started at 50th and Sooner, and it burned all the way to Lake Arcadia. They allowed that entire section that is up there to burn because they said there's nothing worth saving. There would be nothing changed. There's no water infrastructure. They had to pipe water in for that. Like I said, there's not the infrastructure for it. Everything, the utilities, water, gas, sewage, all stops on the west side of Sooner. So, no, just the pollution and the noise alone is reason for you guys to say no to this, but my sanity is my reason I'm fighting to keep that wild. And I know that if the people in the graveyard right there that's sectioned out, if they could speak, they'd say they want to keep their area wild too. So please, I beg you, do not pass this. It's insane. It's totally encroaching on everything that, yeah, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I get a little passionate, but that's my home. And I'm willing to fight for my home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's everyone that I had signed up to speak. I feel like this is a little bit of poor timing since it just happens to fall on, where we don't have a Ward 7 representative. But I also understand, I think understanding where the commission, how they feel about this. Do we have questions for Mr. Uday?
And if you want to, you can answer some of the questions that was asked.
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely understand the sentiment. I've lived in the area for several years in different places in the area. It is a beautiful area. It is an area that I also am determined to protect. So I completely get the sentiments of the neighbors. I'm not sure I understand the accusation that we don't care about the trees or the wildlife. I would argue that our original development, which is just north on Wilshire and Coltrane, showcases just the opposite. We absolutely care about wildlife. We absolutely care about tree preservation. You can look at any of the developments that have been done in that section, and you can look at ours, and you can see a stark difference. That difference being the preservation of mature trees, and not just that preservation, but a design that takes it into consideration. So myself and Richard, we've spent time walking that site, and so when you walk down that street, when you walk around that neighborhood, you can see that it's intentional. It's intentionally designed to keep that rolling hills look, to keep the mature trees that are there. So that's exactly the same type of development principles that we would bring to this next neighborhood. Today is the only time I'm aware that we've had any negative criticism about the way that we've developed the first neighborhood. In fact, you all saw significant protests in that development, and many of those protesters are now our neighbors, walk our neighborhood, come and congratulate us on the job that we've done and the fact that we've preserved trees and we've held up to what we said we were going to do. I'm more than happy to share with the homeowners in this site and walk them through exactly what our plan is so that they will understand the same thing will happen there. In terms of fire mitigation, I understand that there's some specific fire response times for urban zoned or urban designated categories. I would argue that this is a little bit different in the sense that we're not talking about 6,000 square foot lots. So we're not talking about packing a bunch of houses in there. The actual travel time between the closest fire station and this site is 7 minutes. And that's as a regular citizen that doesn't have a fire engine or lights, that can't just go through stop signs. So I don't think we're talking about some extreme response time when it comes to fire. I'm also aware of the fire that happened there years back. I would argue that some development, we can argue all day about what type of development, but some development will help with that as it will mitigate fire risk. Part of the reason that some of those decisions made, and I don't intend to speak for the fire department, may have been the fact that there were no housing there and there was a cluster of trees there, a lot of brush there. It created a fertile environment for a fire to happen, in my opinion. So as you all are aware, we put a development in, we have to adhere to various codes and regulations, part of those being the installation of new fire hydrants. So I would not only argue that this is not creating a fire risk, I would argue that it mitigates the fire risk that exists currently.
And just one thing, I was gonna ask Dustin to come up and just talk about the water and the sewer that's.
Yeah, no, Dustin Segraves, Utilities Department. And just to let you know, there is a water line that is on Northwest 63rd Street and Sooner Road. It stops at Sooner Road. It's a 20-inch water line. That's the closest water line we have. The closest sanitary sewer line that we have is our 96-inch main collection that's going to the North Canadian Treatment Plant. That is just a little bit east of Meridian and Wilshire. So if they wanted to, there's a possibility that they could possibly build a lift station and be able to pump sewer to that main collection system. That is a possibility that it is there, but being as such that the utilities is not close enough to require them to extend the facilities, but that is an option.
So the site would be developed with public water, right?
Correct.
Yep. And there's also some other interesting characteristics of the neighborhood, Marcus, and I thought maybe you'd go over those in some of the different tracks and what you were proposing.
Yeah. So what you're seeing in the main area, there's a little cutout, there's a horseshoe along Northeast 63rd. That's a cemetery right there, and that's about a 24.5 acre piece that creates that horseshoe around the cemetery. There's that piece, and then there's what I would call an upside down Oklahoma shape. Those two pieces comprise our main track, and that's where you would have some quads that are there up along the entrances, up along Sooner, and as well as 63rd, and then single-family residences throughout. The piece that's remaining is just over 15 acres, and it's the piece that's in the lime green. That is the piece that we have designated for co-housing, specifically senior living 55 plus. And the idea there is, quad units on each one of those properties with some type of common clubhouse for programming. We spent some time going to view a community, and one of the things that we picked up is how they program and what's made them so successful, and we're simply modeling this after that exact same development.
I was going to ask, you've read the staff report,
I have.
presumably, and there's a TE. It's kind of a what I've heard described as a choose your own adventure. So where are you on sort of A or B? Are you willing? Just what are your thoughts on that? Because and I will. So let me preface that with saying we have been increasingly concerned about septic systems and particularly aerobic and lot size, and we have really been trying to get well over 1 acre lots in these subdivision developments that rely on septic systems. So, and some of that's kind of what's the scale of the development. Some of them are smaller and we can be a little more flexible, but the bigger they get, the more impact that has when you stack all these lots that are on septic. So I'm just going to say before I turn it over to you is that 1 acre lot size is pretty important to our and precedents that we have established in the last couple of years around this oval. So what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that disposition that this body has. I would say that when it comes to private sewer, I've been, I would say, a loud advocate of aerobic systems, primarily just in the way that they operate, and particularly to how it's different than a septic system. So what we have all the time is we see these comparisons where they're thrown together, aerobic and septic or private sewer, and there's just this large category and everything falls underneath it. But there's a marked difference between the aerobic systems and the septic systems in the sense that, without going into a whole science lesson, these are miniature wastewater treatment facilities on site. So we're not limited to the percolation of the soil. We're not in a situation where we just came out of, where we've got large rain events and the ground is already full and there's no room for saturation. We're not talking about contaminating soils or groundwater, rather. This is completely different. We're talking about a system that at the end of its cycle would spray out the remainder, and at that point, it's considered surface stable. The last phase of it is running along the soil. The bacteria, all of the harmful elements have been removed at that point. Now, one of the things that I personally agree with that this body's had to juggle with and handle is the maintenance of them. That's the trade-off. These systems require more maintenance than just a traditional septic system. And as much as I hate to admit it, overall, in general, people have not done a good job maintaining them. Those of us that live with these systems have the mandatory 2-year maintenance that the service provider provides, and after that 2-year period is over, nobody thinks to check on them anymore. And so I'm all ears and all for recommendations for what we can do to tackle that, to make sure that the neighborhood and the community that we have is one where these systems remain serviced on a regular schedule. I believe DEQ proposes every 6 months, so that is something that I'm willing to do. But a lot of the pushback against the systems I do think is unfair, simply because most of the complaints fall into lack of proper maintenance. So I'll say that to the sewer portion of it. In regards to just staff comments in general, the staff report, there's some parts in there that I don't think make great reading, but I don't blame staff for them. Staff is limited by what they can do. Staff is limited with the comprehensive plan. What I would like to point out is the comprehensive plan is limited with land use typologies for which we can put a development into. And so in this case, when we're talking about rural medium versus urban low, the comprehensive plan is essentially saying we've got baskets. And if you reduce land use topology down to baskets, we've got these baskets. And you fit in this basket or you fit in this basket. This development doesn't fit in either one of those baskets. And it may be easy to say, well, just change the development type. That wouldn't work either, because this particular portion of land has already been decided by the comprehensive plan as being appropriate for urban development as soon as that urban future layer has been lifted. And so when you put those things together, you understand, if going back to this whole basket scenario, if housing were just blocks and you've got a basket for 1 pound blocks and you've got a basket for 3 pound blocks, there's no basket for 2 pound blocks. What we've done is we've taken the liberty to say, hey, this is a 2 pound block. This is what we feel would be appropriate in between these two. This is what we feel like is a good balance. It doesn't make sense to have a harsh transition from urban to a more of a rural land setting, but it also doesn't make sense to try to make something fit into either one of these when the area is simply not for that. And I don't know how familiar you are with the area, but it is not my opinion. And while my neighbors may disagree with the development, I can assure you it's not their opinion that this should be developed as an urban community on 6,000 square foot lots.
So you're not in favor, you're not really interested in pursuing the public sewer extension, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, thank you. So I won't say that I'm not interested in pursuing it. It's not something that we've run. It's that decision, the reason, when I say run, it's not a model that we run. We've not put a pro forma together that looks at extending the sewer line. And part of the reason that we've not done that is out of respect for neighbors. Well, like I said, I've lived in the area for some time. Doing that would go completely against what we know to be the general sentiment of the folks that live in that area. And as Richard just reminded me, one of the things that we also should point out is that DEQ, and I'm sure you all are aware, the body that sets the regulations on these systems has allowed for an aerobic system whenever there's, allowed to go down to half acre on an aerobic system whenever it's serviced by municipal water. And so I've spent some time talking with staff, I've spent some time talking with engineers, and most importantly, I've spent some time talking to the folks responsible for these regulations and requirements, and they're very thorough. I'm not at all willing to stand here and say the city of Oklahoma City doesn't know what they're doing when they come up with regulations, no more than I'm willing to say that these folks that sit in the office of DEQ don't know what they're talking about. You can go there, you can spend time, I actually did this, you can spend time with those folks, they'll come down and they'll walk you through everything having to do with affluent, with measures and formulas and calculations that most of us have not thought about since the last time we've changed a diaper. That's about the most that we ever been thinking about something like that. But they've determined that a half acre of land is sufficient for discharge when an aerobic system is in use. That being said, that determination was made based on the assumption that the system is properly maintained. So again, I do concede that that's a concern, and I'm willing to address that concern in any manner that the board, that this commission feels is appropriate.
And what are your lot size? I mean, you've got some larger, but what's your average kind of smaller size, the smaller lots on your property? Are they half or are they three-quarter?
They're half. So the smallest ones are right at a half.
21,780
Directly at a half.
is the smallest.
We've talked about the maintenance issues with the aerobic systems. I noticed in here that you have not only single-family homes, but duplex, threeplex, fourplex. So duplex, threeplex, fourplex, who's going to be responsible for maintaining those systems if they are an aerobic system? I mean, is there a single ownership that maintains those, or how's it going to happen? And then we're also talking about your minimum lot size. Now we've got threeplex, fourplex, potentially on that 21,000 square foot minimum lot size that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely correct in the sense that it's single ownership on those. And so we can't split them. That's by design. Another thing that's by design is when it comes to sizing the aerobic systems for those multi-unit properties, we still have to follow the same math. So we've designed a couple iterations of it, and those designs, based on the bedroom counts, will still put us under that BOD threshold, which is a threshold that ODEQ uses. So I believe it's biochemical oxygen demand, and that's the ultimate thing that determines how much oxygen is available for the microbes to help break down the solid waste. So we're talking about a scenario where we built a house very close to this site. It's about 5,000 square feet. And so the same number of bedrooms, the same calculations that go into the amount of solid waste that's likely to enter into that system, and making sure that there's enough oxygen available to break down the solid waste would be the exact same calculations here. The only difference is, rather than having 2 bedrooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms downstairs in this wing and 2 on that wing of the house, there's a partition wall separating the occupants of it. But the math is exactly the same. The usage is exactly the same. So much in the same way that we wouldn't be able to exceed those tolerances in a single-family residence, we won't exceed them in a duplex or triplex scenario.
It's well stated. We've had numerous study sessions on this as well, and it's not quite that simple in my mind. Is 2 separate families that occupy 2 bedrooms each and 4 total is still different than 1 4-bedroom home with 1 family in it. But I appreciate what you've said, and I'm,
yeah, and I don't mean to oversimplify.
It's a little different than that, maybe.
Those calculations that I'm talking about would still be counting separate residences. So there's a table that they use, and so the table that adds the BOD per bedroom, we're not only adding that, we're adding the total living unit BOD for each new structure. So it's not, I don't mean to say it's as simple as you got 4 bedrooms here and you got 2 duplexes with 2 bedrooms. We're accounting for the kitchen, we're accounting for laundry, which is, not that anybody cares, but it's a BOD of 0.5. We add that 0.5 back into every single one of these scenarios. So at that point, we have made them equal.
Okay, understood. Good response. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to be honest, and I appreciate the people that have spoken and the emotional attachment to the land and wanting to preserve the wild nature of it. I also, on the other side of that is we're here to vote on private landowners that have land, that have rights to develop it. And so as much as I would love to see national park land and protection of species and trees everywhere and concentrate people into dense urban areas, I can't inflict that. That's not how Oklahoma City is developing and growing, and this is a developing area. So, and so I do want to see housing opportunities on the northeast side, and I'm in support of that. So I want to hope we can find a way to get to enough compromise so that everyone's happy as neighbors together. And certainly screening is an easy one on adjacent properties. I'm struggling with the lot size and you know, if you had to meet 1 acre lots, does that kill, I mean, what does that do to you?
It absolutely kills it. We've been playing with the idea of doing 3/4 acres and are trying everything we can to make that work.
These septic, or these areas without sewer are always really complicated.
Have you had the opportunity to get together with neighbors and discuss their concerns?
Yeah, we've spent the last couple of weeks, my daughter and I have gone door to door, and I hate that I didn't get to meet with these folks. I think Miss May, I missed her at home and left a card, and one of the other neighbors gave me her number. So we've spoken on the phone a couple times to try to connect, but I believe that I am accurate when I say we've actually stopped by the homes of at least 80% of the folks in that immediate area. And we've spoken to the majority of those that we've stopped at.
What are these blue areas? Are these detention zones on your site plan?
Conceptual. So obviously the civil engineers will be the ones to make the final calls on those, but just given the elevations on each one of these areas, these are what we looked at in terms of where we thought detention may be necessary. And I believe we did this very conservatively. So what's more likely than seeing new detention being added, it's more the case that part of this detention engineering and working with the city will say you're not necessarily needing that much.
Mm-hmm. I like the co-living component and all that too. I just, this.
Yeah, I like the creativity and that it's an interesting concept. It's nice to see something different. I'm just really struggling with the lot size and the septic issue. I just have a hard time with that.
Particularly considering consistency with other cases in the last year or two that we've been applying that 1 acre logic makes this very difficult.
So let me add, I agree, and you said it pretty well. It's good developer here, folks, good neighbors. It's a very tough call. This 1 acre issue, it's not just the septic. It's also just, it's somewhat of a compromise out where this is, at least today, and the lack of development out there. So I'm in agreement with you guys that both sides, you got really good points, but this 1 acre is tough, and it's not just a septic issue to me. It's maybe the main one, but it's also just a 1 acre lot kind of area right now.
I understand what you're saying with the area size. Going back to the aerobic, I understand DEQ has the half acre, and where DEQ fails, I believe, is to not specify a maximum home size on a half acre lot. And you can, perfect case studies, my addition of 150 half acre homes with many have, circle drives, big driveways. You have a great spray area until you build a swimming pool or add a pergola and have to move the heads. There's nobody monitoring that, not even the city. Not one city inspector's ever came out and said that I can know of, hey, you just sprayed your spray field on the common area or a neighbor's yard, or issues like that. So with that being said, in looking at this, any little bit above half acre, every little bit helps, and or stating a maximum home size, if that makes sense. Not to exceed.
Mr. McMowan, do you have something to add?
Yeah, Richard McCowan, 6501 North Classen, Oklahoma City. If I could, speak to the idea of the lot size. So this 15-acre parcel that's in green and pink and yellow, sorry for all the colors, it's my fault, that's the co-housing piece. So in 2014, there was a really great article that came out in the Oklahoman about a co-housing community that had just been completed in Stillwater. And myself, my wife, Kara, now Llewellyn, and a really dear friend of mine who was in our mid-70s at the time. I got in the car with these 3 women, 3 different ages, and we drove over to see this community in 2014. And it was amazing. And we've tried to replicate it in its structure here. 36 houses over there, all in these four units, really charming, and it works really well. Now, when Rhonda got in touch with Marcus about, how could we incorporate a piece of her land into this use, it tucks back in here really nicely. And we went to work, and we also went back to Stillwater. A whole bunch of us loaded up a decade later in 2024, and the community in Stillwater is working better than ever. Some of the people, of course, that we met who were in their 90s in 2014 were no longer still living. They'd had really great transition of that neighborhood. What we found on both trips was each one of those in the co-housing, it was one person living there with one exception. So out of the 36 units, there was one couple living there, and everyone else was just living by themselves. It's really kind of important to be able to have, what we're showing there in green is the open space, to have walking trail for people to go somewhere, community garden, that type of thing. And I think Marcus and I have talked about this, and he knows so much more about aerobic septic systems than anyone I know, other than people that install them. But we can certainly with, we do this all the time with things like pedestrian easements, or I even have a view shed easement in a Norman neighborhood. We can lay an easement over the back of any of these that would prevent someone getting a swimming pool permit. These lots are usually deeper than they are wide. And that would be a really easy way to protect that spray field. And then it's handled. If you come in and apply for a permit to build a swimming pool, easy review, you can't build it in an easement, no different than you can't build it in any other kind of easement. That could certainly be a function of the final plat. But I think handling this via the minimum lot size really ties our hands, because if we don't get 36 people living back there, it's a critical number. And we've got a limited amount of land. DEQ, we've done half-acre lots like this in Norman. We've done them before in the city of Oklahoma City. Work very well when you've got municipal water. I'm finding I was totally unaware of a precedent for 1 acre with municipal water and aerobic septic. These are good systems, and we've been doing them for a long, long time without any problems. And then if you add in, mandatory requirement through the mandatory property owners association for agreeing to a maintenance contract, and somebody's professionally checking these, those kinds of things work. And they work really well. So I think, Oklahoma City has so much land, but there isn't that much land that's got sanitary sewer and water. So over on the Ideal Home side of my life, we're constantly out looking for land. And we studied, bringing sanitary sewer to this, we would have had gone through at least 45 separate property owners' property getting easements to lay a sewer line. It was impossible. I mean, it's a complete deal breaker. Trying to come up, when you make those lots really big, you go to a 1 acre lot, you've got to buy essentially twice as much road, twice as much water line. And now we're no longer building houses in an attainable price range. What is an attainable price range today? Exclusive of our co-housing, which that's a condominium thing, which is expensive anyway. But when you think about attainable price range today, we're talking about a $450,000 house, kind of minimum. So just double that when you go to the 1 acre lot, because the home price is a complete function of the lot price. And the lot can't really cost more than 16 to 20% max. So once we're stuck having to build these giant lots, we're in the world of $1 million homes, and that is not the shortage that Oklahoma City has. So I I want to just say it's not a good policy. If we're going to need to continue to find creative ways to build housing that's somewhat attainable, half at 1 acre lots is the opposite direction of going to anything. Your result is always going to be in today's market, and house costs are not going to go down. The cost of new construction may go flat, but it isn't going to like come down 10%, not even 5%. So $1 million homes doesn't feel at all like a good idea. And so, you know, the co-housing piece, the other thing is, you know, the number of occupants in a house today is incredibly low compared to when these standards were set. You know, 27% of all households in America, one occupant household. So, you know, just like the co-housing, if any of these do get built as, you know, in a two unit type, that's probably 1 or 2 people living there on either side wanting to just live out, you know, in a rural setting. Now, probably the last thing I should say is, you know, and Marcus mentioned it, when we walk this land, that hilltop doesn't have very many trees on it. It's got a handful of just, you know, small pioneers, lots of cedar trees. You know, if you think about here, right here in the heart of Oklahoma City, or like West Campus in Norman, 100% of the trees came with the houses. If you look at photographs of downtown Norman or the campus in 1907 at statehood, it was prairie, grass as far as you could see.
Mr. McCallum.
Same thing here.
Mr. McCallum, please. Chair, 1907, OU, I don't know where we're going with this. You've got to get to some points and get moving, please, Mr. Chair. I mean, I don't know how long we've been on this item, but you've been in excessive
Can I ask a question?
conversation. I didn't want to cut you off completely, just, it seemed like you were going the wrong direction rather than the right. 1907 statehood in Norman, I'm not interested.
We're going to plant a lot of trees with these houses, and this will become a forested area.
There you
go. Can I ask a question? I'm not sure if Mr. Uday or Mr. McCown, but this seems like a great opportunity for a cluster development. Have you considered doing something like that where you'd have, you know, one joint sewer system, you'd have, you know, that sort of system? I know you guys are both aware of cluster developments. Is that something that would be workable? I ask because it seems to me that might be one way of addressing the concern about ongoing maintenance and so on. You know, in that situation, you'd have a you know, an HOA that would maintain it, so that would probably remove that concern. You'd still have the density concern, but, you know, that would provide some kind of consistent common open space that would potentially help the neighbors' concerns as well. Have you guys considered that?
Only to the extent that it came up in a discussion with DEQ about alternative options, and I don't want to speak for DEQ. I felt that from the meeting with them that what we were asking for was most appropriate for this site. It seems like they tend to look at that when you get even larger than what we've got proposed here, but I won't say that it's something we're completely opposed to. I do, sitting here listening to Richard, and his brain works different than mine, and I'm grateful for that. I think that, and I would ask Commissioner Govine and Commissioner Meek if some of the items that he brought up does not assuage some of your concerns, in the sense that I can say right now that I am more than willing to add an easement. That's something I hadn't thought about, but I think that's genius. We add an easement, and now it puts it squarely back on the city's radar, where nobody can go in and put a pool or anything in the way that would impede that spray head. And then to your point, I'm also not opposed to making it a requirement, actually writing it into the covenants and the operating agreement for that LLC, so that the HOA is responsible for each one of those systems. So that way we've removed it completely from the private side of the equation. A homeowner can be, for lack of a better term, as lazy as they want to be, never touch it. It's already taken care of with their annual dues. So I'm agreeable to both of those.
Those are the two things I heard through that we haven't discussed before with other developers and that make a lot of sense if we're even at a place where we can.
We can't really. I mean, we can't really do anything about their covenants or require them or, put that into our PUD.
We can put it in, we have
We
added
have
that
done.
before.
Yeah, okay.
And as far as the easement goes, like, once they begin, going back to where I live, they put all the utilities in the front, which push the houses back. Nobody puts their aerobics in the front. They're in the backyard. So now, if you could also push utility easements, to the back, which puts that easement where, you couldn't encroach over a spray field. There's a lot of ways to make that half acre work better, and I do like Richard's idea.
And also having a utility easement that was then for a future sewer line.
Right.
To be, if public sewer ever got there, they'd have a place to put it.
Yes.
I'm agreeable to all of that.
Okay.
There is a specific plan requirement, so we would see this again. Is this going to be platted?
Yes.
So that would come, yeah. So.
Let me jump back in real quick. I'm going to say y'all, whoever might end up going a direction might know this. Here's trying to bend over towards making this happen somehow. Staff gave 3 different recommendations to me. You called it whatever you call it. I'm with one of those. To me, this is too much of a stretch as presented, so I could deny it. We could continue it until we've heard, is it right that CPA 25, that this comprehensive plan amendment was coming in a couple weeks anyway, so I'm not sure why we're prematurely hearing this and you hadn't yet thought about some of these things and we're hearing them on the fly. Or number 3, we could approve it with these things that they have suggested here that seem very reasonable to me. With that many options recommended by staff, I like any one of those 3. Bending farther than any of those 3 on the fly, I don't know enough about these, and I'm not comfortable in this location with anything other than one of these 3 recommendations.
Well, first off, I think the comprehensive plan amendment is to remove the urban future.
Correct.
And so he would choose between.
Which we may deny, but we haven't heard it yet.
But, I mean, whether that went or not. Sarah, did you have something to say?
Yeah, sure. Sarah Welch, Planning Department. So there was a comp plan that was filed. This is a unique area of the city. Technically, with the comp plan, when the layer is removed, it becomes urban low intensity. However, directly across the street is land that's designated both as rural low, which supports 5-acre lots, and then rural medium, which supports densities at around 2 acres. So it's in this area where, as staff, knowing how the commission feels about aerobic and septic system, my approach was to have the applicant talk about the development, hear your thoughts, and then bring back a comp plan amendment that aligns with whichever way you're going. Because if you approve the rural medium, then we're going to apply different policies than we would if you were to lift the layer and call it urban low.
And I'm not opposed to submitting a comp plan, but I do want to give my rationale. I did complete a comp plan application, and it was after speaking with staff that I decided not to go through with submitting that comp plan. And the reason was because I'm under the impression that staff is not in a position to recommend approval for a comp plan amendment, regardless of if I ask for a comp plan amendment for rural medium or urban low. It doesn't matter to me which one. If you guys tell me today, Marcus, come back in here with a CPA for urban low, I'll do it. If you say come back with a CPA for rural medium, I'll do it. I don't think it makes a difference. And so if it's performative, if that's what you all want to see, I'm happy to comply with it, but I don't think anything's going to change on staff side. I think that they've got some limitations and some restrictions that they're bound to, and then it's not going to change on our side. We're still going to ask for the half-acre lot. So I think if I can distill this down, what this comes down to choose your own adventure is the adventure options are, do we say that this is a rural medium development where we are asking to go below the minimum lot size, or do we say that this is an urban low development where we're asking to be omitted from adding sewer? That's it. That's all that comes down to.
And the staff didn't recommend either of what you just said. You're asking for something different than what they are recommending. You're asking for beyond that, and I can't go beyond that, I'm afraid.
Well, I believe staff actually asked for the public sewer.
Wait, but he's not agreeing to the public
Right,
sewer.
but, I mean, that's what they asked for.
Right. And he wants something that is
or-
none of the choose your own ventures. He wants a even more aggressive adventure
Right.
that is,
Which
I'm
is-
not going to do the sewer. I want small lots.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me. You're not going to approve my comprehensive plan, so just give me something else. And
Which
I
is why it's a PUD, to negotiate the effort.
We recognize that this PUD does not fit neatly into either land use typologies. The PUD is the mechanism to tailor the development.
Let me make sure I'm clear though, but that is your third option, in which case the maximum density within the PUD shall be half dwelling unit per acre, which I calculate to 2 acres per dwelling. And they're not agreeing to that either. So the PUD that you recommend, they're wanting more aggressive than that PUD.
Right, in all aspects. And I just want to say a few things about the location of the property. It's a mile away from my office. I'm here all the time. It's 2 miles away from I-35. I've talked about this before. I mean, you might consider that rural, but it's 2 miles from I-35. 2 miles to the north, there's a density of 6,000 square foot houses. Yes, they're served by public sewer, but if this was served by public sewer, we'd be looking at 6,000 foot lots.
That'd be fine.
So I'm just saying, that's why the negotiation is here, is to try to find a median. And it's a stretch. I'm not saying it's not.
I'll tell you where I am. I mean, I think the co-housing is, I think that's a great idea. It's the half acre. And if Mr. Uday, if you've considered looking at going to 3/4, I don't know where everyone else sit, but I would feel a lot better and could probably get there if you were able to go 3/4.
Still with some of the amenities that he's.
Yeah, I mean, I really like I like the idea of the easement that would prohibit, pools, because that's why I want to go to the 3/4 is because of the aerobics septic.
I like the idea of the easement too. One of my questions is, are we okay with, let's say we do go to 3/4, are we okay with 3-plex, duplex, 4-plex on 3/4, or do those change proportionally?
My understanding is that would change, I mean, if the area required is factored into the calcs on those, from what we heard earlier, that would require a larger field that they would have to comply with. It would have to be within the easement if we were to make.
You're absolutely correct. That would limit us regardless of what you all say here, because we still have to meet those requirements.
But
We're
I'm
not
talking
asking for any
in
deviation.
terms of general density.
Just general density, not related to the sewer issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, kind of related to both, but in terms of general density, and then are there, right now, the way it's written, if I understand it correctly, it can be all 4-plexes.
Well, but they would, well, I mean, maybe it could be, but.
So.
I like the option that's urban low LUDA, but we find a way to mitigate the no sewer fact that that's just what the land, that's where they are. And that there's a number of TEs that can mitigate that with the easement issue and the HOA maintenance and the 3/4 acre. I mean, makes us feel better, but I don't want to kill a development. I mean, but those two things with 3/4 being under 1 feels a lot more appropriate. But I like the variety. I think allowing for that variety of housing types and sizes and different living arrangements is really important to making these types of developments work. So you've got a mix of single family co-housing and some, a moderate amount of multi.
And I don't disagree with that, but are you willing to are you willing to commit to a certain proportion so that we don't end up with all duplexes or all 4-plexes, that we have some sort of commitment in terms of how those lots are developed?
Yeah, if you have a percentage of lots that you want to cap me at, that you say you can't go over this percentage of lots with anything above single-family residence, I'm happy to. It's not our intention at all to develop this as a neighborhood full of quadplexes or triplexes. So that's an easy concession. And if you have a number in mind, that's a decision that I'm prepared to make here today.
Ms. Burge, I understand that you want to say something. I will, if you can keep it to 60 seconds. Okay, please keep it to 60 seconds. Come up to the.
One of the gentlemen back here spoke about the fire safety and all of that. Well, I have lived there since 1954. My family moved to 5924 for my brother's birthday, August 10, 1954. And we have never had adequate fire protection, and I have not heard that adequately addressed today, nor have I heard anything about protection. I've heard lot sizes, I've heard sewer, we all have our own sewers. And we deserve, you don't give us a discount on our taxes. We deserve protection, just like everyone else. We deserve fire protection, just like everyone else. The fire that came through on 2013, I think it was, that came through, destroyed nearly everything in that area. Now, my house was saved. I don't have a lot of trees around my house on purpose because our house burnt down in 1962. So I have experience with
15
that, and knew
seconds.
not to have a lot of trees around my house. And then the other thing that this young man talked about, restrictions on pools in an area that has at least 1 acre. I think a lot of people would have an issue with that. I've got an acre of land, but I can't put a pool on it. But I would like to hear someone address the safety issue.
So they're going to be a public water line, and there will be the exact same safety as any other neighborhood that is served by public water in the city of
Are you
Oklahoma
going to
City.
give me water also? Right now, I have a well.
I can address your questions, ma'am. Right now, if there's a fire in that area, there's not hydrants in your area.
There's a pump truck that comes.
There's a tanker that arrives and they have to shuttle water, which severely limits fire protection in your area. If this was approved, don't know if it's going to be or not, but if it is approved, they would have to put, and Dustin can speak to this even more, they would have to put in fire hydrants. It's every 400 feet, 500 feet. Every 500 feet would be a fire hydrant on a city fire main that would bring a large amount of fire hydrants into this
The rules would
area.
change because right now, west of Sooner Road, there are about at least 17 fire hydrants. There's one on the corner of 63rd and Sooner, no more.
Okay, they have to have a fire hydrant every 500 foot in this neighborhood. So all the way down.
That neighborhood.
In that neighborhood,
That's the key
yes.
thing. That didn't help me a bit. In
Well,
that neighborhood.
the
I wanna
city-
be in that
Okay,
neighborhood.
all right, I'm not sure this is going anywhere. All right, I think we've debated this. As Commissioner LaForge said, we've got basically 3 staff recommendations in front of us. I'm going to say I'm not ready to deny it. I wouldn't support a denial. I do think there needs to be some more thought put into it. I think we've provided a lot of feedback today on what we think it would take to get there. So I think, personally, I'm with options to continue this and hear more, or look at the approved subject to the technical evaluations. So I don't know where everyone else stands, but
I'd like to just ask the applicant where he is, but
Yeah, as I stated before, I have no problem with continuing. If there's something that I can bring to you all, no issue at all. My position is I don't think that there's anything extra to bring. I can file, as I stated before, I can submit the comp plan amendment. If you all say, Marcus, submit this, and that's what it's going to take from me, I'll gladly do it. But if you all do decide to continue it, I would just ask that you tell me specifically what it is that you need from us.
Mr. Uday, real quick, I'll let them be more specific. I'm a little negative on this one right now, I'm sorry. But for you to say you can't do any more, and I heard the word impossible with bringing sewer and stuff, you're making it as if we have to bend over and give you something. Instead, they've asked you if you would come back. You're saying you can't, and you're impossible, and you're this and that. So I put it back on you guys you're here, and you heard about almost an hour's worth of concerns. So y'all got to satisfy the concerns.
And I understand your point, and I think that that's what we've at least attempted to do. Maybe we've not met the mark in your opinion, but that's what we've been here doing, is trying to address the concerns. When it comes specifically to extending sewer, I stated earlier, it's not something that we looked at primarily because we know that's not something that the residents want. So I'll be a little bit candid and a little bit frank with this body right now and ask, do you want us to go back and look at a plan where we extend sewer and bring it to you? And are you prepared to vote and give us an approval on that if this room is then filled with residents in the area that say they made it work economically, they made it work from an engineering standpoint, they made it work for their development, their partners, their investors, but now you've got a room full of residents that say you don't want it, because that's the reason we didn't bring it.
If there was sewer there, I would be in favor of it. Being 2 miles from I-35 and this is the area of the city that is developing, then I would err on the side of them. I hate it for the residents that live in an area that is developing, but they live near. They're in Oklahoma City. They're within 15 minutes of a Thunder game, and they don't live, out in western Oklahoma. And so, yes, if you have sewer there, then this is a spot that this develops. And I love the product of this senior living. I love everything about this. It's just not at this location at this time, especially without sewer.
Well, and I would also point out the fact that the development changes also, because part of the economics to make that work is we do have to change the lot sizes. And I'm not willing to say right now, because I don't know the math, I'm not willing to say the senior housing goes away, but it is absolutely more than reasonable to assume that the senior housing goes away because we now need the space for more 6,000 square foot lots.
I just want to throw out, I think if we're continuing and you could give some thought to what can you make work as, at 3/4 acre lot sizes, if we could get there, if there's a way to make that pencil out, and coming back with a little more concrete, sort of consider this idea of the easements and the spray fields, and if we can get enough protections there, then personally I could get there without the sewer, we need to hear
So we
more.
would continue and bring back, we could redraw this as 3/4 acre and bring this back so that.
To me, that with 2 TEs about protection of spray fields with easements, so future development and gazebos and pools and ADUs potentially or whatever doesn't then encroach on that, that would make me feel a lot better, and I would be supportive of that, particularly to whatever legal extent it actually has as HOA maintenance contracts, building that into the development sounds like good ideas to me. So I'd love to hear more about that, and I want to find a way to get there. But obviously I agree with Commissioner LaForge. If we had city sewer here, it'd be a no-brainer, right? I wouldn't have a concern at all. But so that's all I have.
I concur, and I think with the city sewer there, we'd be looking at application with 50-foot wide lots, which I don't think is consistent with the area. So I like your idea.
Well, if there was sewer there, it might not be consistent with the area currently, but if we brought sewer over to here, you would see a tremendous amount of development with 50
It'd be a
foot
whole new
lots.
area and be a whole lot of it coming.
Yeah. And again, Northeast Oklahoma City needs density, they need housing, and so there's a give and take in all of it. But if you would take the continuance to, we're looking at
How long?
June, what is it, June 5th?
We'd only need 2 weeks to redraw and bring, if that's what we're doing, if what we're bringing back, if we're going to continue to bring back a more fleshed out version of what a 3/4 acre plan looks like, that would only take us 2 weeks.
But I think the agenda is that the comp plan amendment's on the 5th, so that's all I was.
So I just want to clarify, are you guys wanting me to submit the CPA as well? Or is
I
that?
don't know enough to comment on that right now. I think staff's going to have to advise you on what's the right procedure there.
Sarah, would the city officially have to remove the layer somehow, even though it wasn't removed? I mean, would you have to?
We'd have to do
administratively go in there and say, hey, this is not urban future anymore, or how does that
Well,
work?
I think the cleanest way to do it would be to, at some point, assign the LUDA that you want us to
We'd eventually have a hearing
compare
on
it
it,
to,
though, right?
but I mean, this is an area where I think you could do, I mean, technically lift the layer and it becomes urban, or you could make the change to make it a rural medium area. You could do it retroactively. You could do it probably as a TE that if the PUD's recommended for approval, then he brings the comp plan back then to match whatever y'all approved. I mean, we don't do that very often, but it's just a confusing area, and I'm not sure how to advise. And Mr. Day and I have talked a lot about this case, and I'm trying to guide him as much as I can, but I don't know what to do for the LUDA.
Right.
It sounds like we need to wait till we get there on the next discussion on this and hearing, and then that can be retroactively put in as a team.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, this will be the first time that I've done anything without changing the comp plan to allow the new use.
We've done a couple of PUDs where they envision they'd have the services in the future, and we've held off until the plat, until it was actually platted to
get the
to
comp
change the LUDA, but
Okay. But I'm just saying, eventually it will have to be changed somehow, right? It'll probably
eventually
come to
we
us.
would, if it wasn't changed by you now, it would likely
would
be
eventually.
included in a future update by staff to align it better with the development.
Right, no, okay. So your answer, then I think it'd be just cleaner just to go ahead and file it and do it.
I mean, we can put it on the agenda for the 22nd. If it doesn't work, go to the 5th.
I think I'm a little confused. So we want to submit a comp plan amendment now, or we want to wait until, okay, no comp plan amendment now? Okay, so we'll just continue for 2 weeks, and then at that time we'll determine.
Yeah.
Okay,
And if something changes in that time, then you can always move it to the 5th. So
okay.
I will make a motion. Okay, I'm not going to make a motion yet.
Other applicants come in here, and we almost always make them come in with a comp plan amendment at the same time they're coming in with a PUD, and we're saying we've never done this. I don't want to encourage other applicants.
Right,
But
I
we
was more
see
concerned
commonly
with
in here,
precedent
We
coming in way
yes,
before.
I can address that. This commission has historically wanted to see a comp plan amendment with the zoning case. The number one reason for that has been applicants who come first with the comp plan amendment and no associated zoning case. The comp plan amendment does not have a mailed notice requirement, so it's put the planning commission in a situation where you have changed the comprehensive plan, and then now the application that comes forward is in conformance with it, but the neighbors never knew. And so the reverse has happened here, where we have publicly noticed the PUD. Ideally, you would see the comp plan and the PUD together. You'd hear the comp plan first and then the zoning case, but again, this is one where I think this case needs to be heard by this body that makes the decision about what the LUDA should be.
Okay.
The 5th. Good.
Clear.
Continue this to the 5th. That way you can bring them both together.
Well, I think I misunderstood. I thought Sarah just explained that the whole purpose of that was so that we made sure that
The opposite.
I thought she
you
said
got, these
22nd.
folks had sufficient notice because of the PUD.
Yeah.
Right.
We're saying in this instance, this is a rare instance, that we're
the
going to do
22nd.
we're not going to wait on the comp plan.
Okay.
I agree.
Making it clear to the rest of the public that it's rare and we don't want to do this often.
Right.
But we've done it.
Flat process.
Right, no, it's not, right. It's not final on the 22nd anyway.
There's always one.
Okay, motion to continue case number PUD 2063 to May 22nd.
All right, we have a motion to continue the item to the May 22nd meeting. That's been seconded by Commissioner Govine. Please cast your votes.
You broke it.
Thank you.
That item is continued. All right, we're going to go back to item 5. If Dean Kalita showed up for PC 10972. All right.
Fallon Brooks Magnus Jolly Bird Design, 733 Northwest 22nd.
Wait, not yet. Or are we just skipping it, or are we continuing Dean Cleveland?
Are you representing
No.
10?
No,
No.
there was another one before you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was
You
told
weren't the
that I-
first one to miss today.
All right. All right, I don't think,
Item 5 is requested to continue to May 22nd.
okay.
There we go.
All right, so we just need a motion to continue the item to the 522 meeting.
I'll make a motion to continue PC 10972 to June 22nd, May 22nd.
May 22nd. All right, we have a motion to continue the item. It's been seconded. Please cast your votes. All right, and that is continued. Okay, now we're going to revisit SPUD 1725, item 9.
Item 9.
You need to call the item.
SPUD, this is SPUD 1725, application to rezone 1210 North Ann Arbor Avenue from R1 and UC.
Good afternoon.
Fallon Brooks Magnus, Jollyberg Design, 733 Northwest 22nd, representing the applicant. So we went out to the site and we measured, confirmed what buildings are on site and sort of the heights of all of them so that we would, be able to better describe what the existing conditions are on site. And I confirmed with my client the reason that we're doing this zoning application is because it is a non-conforming use, the lender for the buyer will not allow them to close on the property because it's a non-conforming use. There is in the municipal code, I looked into this since we talked about it last time, there is a means for non-conforming uses to stay non-conforming without violation or anything like that. But it doesn't address this zoning component that the bank has a problem with. So this whole thing is really administrative. That's all I really have to say about it, I guess.
Okay. Commissioner Meek, this is your ward. Do you have any other information or?
Just more questions. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No.
Okay. The process for something to stay non-conforming but not be non-conforming, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, sorry. I should have had my phone pulled up.
Sorry. Because.
Okay. So in 59-15-250, we have non-conforming buildings and structures. If a structure or building does not conform to district regulations, the lawful existence of a structure or building on the effective date on this chapter may continue, subject to the following provisions. It talks about expansion of non-conforming structures, non-conforming additions, what happens if the building is destroyed, how much of it can be rebuilt, all that sort of thing, in regards to non-conforming uses. So I think that was the concern of what happens if, I think that what happens to these buildings if something, if it all burns down, will they be able to be built back? And I think that what we're proposing in the zoning application is much more limiting than what the non-conforming use would, it would allow them to remain or be rebuilt. This would not. This would allow them to only go back with what is there, the same exact use, the same footprint, all of that. So, and then the other thing that I found when I went to the site that the aerial does not show, this whole area has so many big developed trees. It's like a big canopy. You have no idea any of this is back there when you drive by on the street. It is just a wall and two houses sitting in front of it. That actually surprised me. So I know I don't think any of you guys have gone to the site, but
I've been by there, and that's one of my questions. And I didn't trespass onto the property, but you cannot hardly see any of it. The trees are so heavy, so it's obvious that there's no RV storage there because you couldn't get an RV through the tree canopy. I don't even know that the auto, barely fits. So what type of storage is this?
yeah. So it's hard to see on this aerial here because it's not very close, but there's a long skinny building down here, and that's essentially like a bunch of small little units. It's just a long building that's I think 10 feet deep, and it's maybe 9 feet high total to the roof. It's looks like a portable shed building, but it's on a foundation. The whole property is very clean. It's very well maintained, and the site plan actually says it's gravel. It's actually all asphalt. So it is well maintained. It's.
But do they have separate doors along the front?
Yes, along the side. They're not visible from anywhere except inside the property. So, and then these big long buildings that are against the property line to the north are. They're kind of one long building, and the foundation kind of steps down, and so the buildings kind of change height. They kind of look like old stables, actually.
So they're open on one side?
Nope, they
Okay.
have big doors that,
Okay.
the whole thing is really, again, well closed up. I was really surprised,
Okay.
actually. I hadn't been to the property, so.
Okay. I appreciate the improvement on the site plan. I understand that, it looks like the buildings are about 3 feet off the property line. I understand the application limits the commercial to the back to 525 feet. I understand that it limits 2 residences on the front. I don't think that's the concern we have as far as the fire hazard of these buildings being right on the property line, and I'm talking about 3 of the 4 buildings. Any other commissioners have any thoughts or opinions on whether we limit? I understand that if anything gets torn, as it's written, if anything gets torn down or damaged, that it would have to meet current C3 setbacks, which means if we had a massive windstorm or, God forbid, a fire in these, they couldn't never be built back like this. They would have to meet C3 setbacks. But I'm also worried about if we approve this, that these could stay there like that forever on people's property line, which they would have never been allowed. So, thoughts?
Well, it looks like they've been there forever.
They have been there forever, yes.
Actually, I
Yes.
couldn't verify it, but I think that this whole area was actually annexed into the city limits after these buildings were built.
Okay.
So I kind of feel like that should be taken into consideration too.
What is the C3 setback to R1?
I thought we had found out it was 10 foot. Sorry, sir. I can't see it.
You didn't have any issue with the 4 TEs, did you?
No, the TEs
You're
were all
basically
actually
saying
good, and
you're
actually.
okay. Those have been
I think
fleshed
that
out pretty well, it looks like.
We even had another one that we suggested. I'm trying to find them on here. It wasn't even fully comprehensive. Let's see. It's a technical evaluation. Hang on just a second.
C3 setback next to R1 is 15 feet.
15, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any questions on this
Yeah.
personally.
I'm good with those TEs, yes.
Commissioner Meek?
Want to change the setbacks to 3 feet for the future?
I thought it was covered pretty well
Oh.
in the TE, is in the event of redevelopment of personal storage, the C3 community commercial base zoning setback shall apply. So if they have to rebuild everything anyway, like, they're gonna have to rearrange it and kind of, but they could still get the same density of storage on that site with meeting the setbacks, I think.
I think the last time the question was, given that we're not removing these, we're not putting new buildings in, I think the idea was that it should be 0 feet in case they're not quite 3 feet, because this is not from a survey, this is from me with a tape measure. So I think that just needs to be clarified. That was what was suggested by staff before, was that it be 0 feet so that we're not still non-compliant after all of this.
But they're not changing what exists.
Right. Is that clear enough?
Okay, so you're looking at, that would be an amendment to T number 1 to 0 feet for existing, anything new to comply with the C3 community commercial base zoning setbacks. Correct? Okay, and you are good with all 4?
Yes.
Does one need to be changed for?
The first one needs to be changed to say 0 feet instead of 3, yes.
Yeah, 0 to
For
3
existing structures.
for existing structures and per code for new structures. That seems pretty
That's what
tight.
I just said, yes. Okay.
All right.
All right, with that being said, I'll like to recommend approval for SPUD 1725 with TEs 1 through 4 as written, amending TE 1 to replace the 3 with the 0 for existing structure setbacks.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Meek to recommend approval of the item subject to the amended technical evaluation. It's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
That item is recommended for approval. All right, that is the end of the agenda for items to be heard. Communications and report, Planning Commission committees? Nothing. Planning Commission members? Nothing.
Nothing for me.
Planning Department?
Just one thing, we may need to reschedule that study session again, possibly. So if we do that, we're running out of time though, because the city council, it still needs to go to them at the same time frame. So if we need to push it to the following week, is there a general preference for just keep it on Thursday, and it's a non-planning commission Thursday? And we can send out an email if you all want, but if there's a general preference to let me know now, we can do that, or we can send out a.
Whatever's good for Rusty.
I'm fine with Thursday.
Whatever's good for you. So we got it 22nd, and you're saying 29th?
Yeah, we'll do that unless there are objections.
I don't know. I
Okay.
lost track of what you're saying. So, I mean, it's gonna have to be the next soonest meeting that you can get it in after the one that it has to be delayed from, right?
Yes, so, which, at this point, we can't postpone it till the next planning commission meeting. It would have to be the following week,
Can't go 2
non-planning
weeks,
commission.
only go
So-
1 week.
Also,
I don't
okay.
mind if it's not on a planning commission day, personally. That
Yeah.
probably kind of works better for me.
Okay, we'll send out an email just to, we'll shoot for Thursday.
We have Board of Adjustments that day. That's like
Oh, that's
3 days
right.
for me.
You can't get away. Oh,
All right, so we'll look at the 29th.
man.
We'll look at the
We'll
29th,
still
we'll
get
let you
the
know for
info.
sure, one way or the
They're gonna
other.
have a
Okay.
packet, like-
Anything else?
Nope.
Municipal Counselor's Office? All right, citizens be heard. Other business? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.